My name's Eric Welander. Welcome back to my channel. Today is a little more low-key, unscripted video with Q&A from you guys, a wide-ranging discussion about everything from what do I do during the day to what smart home automations does my wife hate, what ones does she enjoy, to all kinds of other questions you guys have about your smart home, like starting a new smart home and graphing data of things like temperature over time. So let's get started. First question, Suf Bay Dad asks, if it's not too personal, what do you do for work? What made you decide to get into making YouTube content? How did you find the balance of enjoying personal time to yourself and with family and still continue to churn out great content? Well, thanks, Suf Bay Dad. I'm glad you're enjoying my content. But I actually work during the day as an app developer writing apps for iPhone and iPad, and I've been doing that for a handful of different companies since 2011. And most recently, in June of 2022, I became the tech lead at Crate&Barrel, which is a US retailer selling furniture and kitchenwares, and they also have like a wedding registry and gift registry program. And I'm working on a lot of exciting things over there with a great team, but most of it really hasn't seen the light of day yet. So I'll definitely share on social media and stuff when some of that launches. But that's also why you probably see me be pretty critical about the mobile apps that I use for setting up stuff in my smart home, because I just look at apps and see all the different things that could be better, because that's just what I do. Now, as far as YouTube, I actually got into YouTube because of app development. So I'd often built apps on the side outside of work, like one called Best Photos. And I thought, well, as a way to market this app to people, I could create content on YouTube and bring them behind the scenes of me building this app, Best Photos, and from there, hopefully get some downloads and grow the app. But then that didn't really work out and wasn't quite what I had hoped in terms of just, I lost ideas of how to bring people behind the scenes of that. And then I started reviewing products in my home and did the HomePod and the Philips Hue dimmer switch. And then one thing led to another, and I had an Apple smart home tech channel. And I haven't always been very consistent over the years. I've definitely taken time off. And I think that the key there is just to find something with YouTube that is really fun for you if you're interested in doing YouTube or whatever kind of creation stuff like that, or app development. You know, this is ultimately a free time activity for me. This is a night I have free to myself, and I'm deciding to hang out here with you guys and answer some questions. Because like earlier this week, I was at a tech conference for work on Monday and Tuesday, and so by Wednesday night, I was just completely out of energy. So I just ended up watching some TV and playing some video games on my own. And I kind of got antsy by the end of that, of just wanting to go make something. That's just what I like to do, is make things. And certainly YouTube is my main outlet for that these days. So here I am on Thursday night working on a video after I put the kids to bed. Enzo asks, I find myself leaning towards the Google Doorbell, Nest thermostat, and some other non-HomeKit ready products, even though I prefer the HomeKit app. I'm not the most tech savvy, so I'd like to avoid Homebridge. So do you think Matter will bring these products to HomeKit? I'm building a new home, and aside from running Cat 6 everywhere, great idea by the way, what else would you recommend? So a few different layers of questions here. Of course, Google has announced support for Matter for their thermostat, but so far it's only the thermostat that doesn't have the external temperature sensor. So I use a Nest thermostat as well, and I use the one that has the external temperature sensors you can put throughout your home. And this is great because then you can heat and cool your home based on the temperature in another room that's not where your thermostat is. And that sensor will hopefully be a much more accurate version of what the temperature feels like to you being in the home rather than the thermostat. If you go with the Matter Nest thermostat, you don't have the option of adding those sensors. And my guess is that there's something with those external sensors that doesn't quite line up with Matter on the Nest side. So I've no inside information, but I wouldn't be shocked if you have to buy new versions of those temperature sensors, or maybe even a whole new thermostat to go with Nest and Matter and get those external temperature sensors. But we'll just have to see. The way I integrate Nest with HomeKit right now is the Starling Home Hub. And I find this to be, well, it's still one of these unofficial HomeKit accessories that's kind of like Homebridge in that way. It is a very polished user experience. It's really well built and very easy to set up and just forget it. And like, for example, right now, as I do this filming, I actually turned off the thermostat upstairs so that I don't have the furnace or AC running as I'm filming. And that all happens great through the Home app. And I also used the Starling Home Hub with the Nest doorbell multiple times over the years, as I've had probably like, I don't know, a bunch of different doorbells on my front door. As I go back, sometimes the Nest doorbell, then I integrate it with the Starling Home Hub. Now, keep in mind with some of the cameras with Nest, I don't remember all the details, but you might need to have a Nest Aware subscription to get some of the full functionality there, but you can certainly view the live video inside of the Home app. Now, I think running Cat 6 cable everywhere is a great idea. The other thing you might consider if you're building or moving into a new home, if you happen to have an electrician coming out for one thing or another, see if you can also add smart switches to their list, especially in cases where you have, let's say, a 3-way or a 4-way switch setup, which means 2 switches or more controlling the same set of lights. Because having an electrician do those, it's one of the more complicated smart switch installs, and that way you just have that taken care of for you by a professional. And a lot of times wiring smart switches isn't that different or any different than wiring a non-smart switch. So they can get it all set up working with the lights, and then you could add it to your smart home when you have a chance later on. And of course, the smart lights that I would recommend for most people here in North America are the Lutron Caseta wireless system. Eve also makes a great just switch. There's no dimmer on it. I reviewed that recently. Kanzai12 asks, name the automation you use the most and the automation that you use the least. For me, the most used automations are really in this sort of office den area, and I've used it for many different purposes over the years we've had this home, but it's basically been Dad's little room where I do my work from home and I do things like YouTube and just sometimes relax to get away and have some time alone. And I have a contact sensor on the door as well as a contact sensor on my TV mount over here. And moving those either open or close then triggers different automation. So when I pull my TV out from the wall to watch something, then it sets the lights for watching TV. When I open my door and the lamps are not on for something like filming or any other configuration, then it will turn on my sort of office bright scene. So then I can just open the door, come in, sit down at my desk here and get to work. Well, it does sound like kind of a nice convenience to be able to configure the lights different ways. It's actually a big benefit, I think, for rooms where you use the room for a lot of different purposes, because you can really drastically change the mood of the room depending on what the lights are set to, especially if you have not only lights in the ceiling that are smart, but lots of accent lights around the room. Let's say lamps or LED light strips or really any number of other options that you can set to different colors and brightness levels and just give the mood that you're looking for. Now, the one I use the least, this is a little bit of a preview of an upcoming video that I'm working on, but it's the temperature sensor automations that Apple recently added, especially with the HomePod and HomePod Mini temperature sensors. I think it's really cool that Apple turned on those temperature sensors and gives people that as a way to see a temperature in your home. But I just find those automations, in my experience so far, haven't been all that reliable. And I think in general, a rule of thumb for me is if you want to make automations based on temperature, do it based on a smart HVAC system, because those companies are going to get the temperature stuff right because they're controlling your furnace or your air conditioning or something like that. So instead of saying if the HomePod temperature gets above a certain level during the day, then turn on the fan, you could say if the air conditioning turns on, also turn on the ceiling fan or something like that. I think is going to be a more reliable automation over time. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Apple continues to work on the reliability of these sensors and automations and it gets better over time, but so far that's been my experience. Now, here's the more interesting question. Kanaka Boy 92 asks, what is your wife's favorite automation and what automation drove her nuts? Well, So let's start with what drove my wife crazy, which was my various attempts at automating the lights in our walk-in closet in the parents' bedroom. So we have a small walk-in closet, meaning you can, walk inside the closet. And I wanted a way to just automatically turn the lights on and off because the lights kept getting left on, or then it's annoying because the switch for those lights is sort of outside of the closet. So you have to remember to turn the lights on before you go into the closet. And I tried various motion sensors and various configurations and automations. And I always ran into issues where like my wife would be standing in the closet and then the lights would turn off on her because she wasn't moving enough to keep the motion sensor triggered, or other things where my cats would go in there and hang out because there's a vent from the furnace in there that keeps the cats nice and warm. So they'll go in there, but then that triggers the motion sensor. So then the lights are left on for a while the cats are inside. Potentially, this could be something solved by an Aqara presence sensor, the FP2 that I recently reviewed, but I wanted to try that in my kitchen. So I haven't put that up in the parents' closet, at least right now. So currently, I've just given up on trying to automate my closet lights. We'll see what happens over time. And the automation my wife loves the most is our scenes that are for putting the children to bed. So in each of the kids' rooms, we have a HomePod Mini and noise machines hooked up to smart plugs and a variety of lights. And you can ask the HomePod to turn on the corresponding goodnight scene for that room because the children like a little bit of light at night, and then of course the white noise machines. And our older son actually has some music playing on repeat on his HomePod overnight through the whole night, which, man, does that ever mess up my Apple Music listening history, because it just shows that I've listened to this one album like a ridiculous number of times. But what can you do? I mean, if you have kids, your Apple Music listening history is just a lost cause. And then all of those like really cool year in review things, just they're worthless to me. Now, this next question is going to sound really technical at first, but it does apply to pretty much anybody watching this video. So I was talking with Ben Shearman at this developer conference he was speaking, and it was really great to meet you, Ben. He watches this channel. And speaking of, Ben does a lot of great stuff in the iOS developer community. And if you haven't used nsdateformatter.com and you're an iOS developer, it is a super handy way to compose and test custom date formats, which you might need for something. So side note there, check out nsdateformatter.com if you haven't already. But he has a bunch of Aqara temperature sensors and was wondering about ways to sort of pipe that data into something like Grafana and see graphs. And this brings up a bigger thing that I haven't really talked about much in this channel, which is how do you view historical data of your smart home accessories? And that can really be a handy way to figure out why something is going wrong, troubleshoot stuff, or just see things like temperature over time and understand what's happening in a particular area. The easiest way with a lot of sensors from Aqara as well as Eve is to use the Aqara or the Eve app, and you can go into that specific sensor for a lot of their sensors and pull up historical data. Now, sometimes, like in the case of Eve's, it's loading the data off of the sensor direct to your phone. So it might take a minute depending on the connection speed, but then you'll get the data in a nice graph. And, in certain cases you can export that as like a spreadsheet if you just want to view it, but that's a very manual process. Now, the advantage there is that there's really no setup required. Once you have the sensor set up and just have the app on your phone, you can go there and find that data. Taking it a step further, I have a Mac Mini that's always on in my home, and I recently just started playing with Aaron Pierce's app Home Log, which basically sits on your Mac and logs the state of different accessories in your smart home. Now, I think the probably more elaborate technical solution is using something like, let's say, Home Assistant or Habitat or even Homebridge with something like Hoobs, and getting some kind of a way to have an always-on device in your smart home that's viewing the data and then piping it to something where you can view that data in a nice chart. Now, Habitat recently sent me one of their hubs, and so I'll be checking that out in a future video, probably in the next month or two. I have a bunch of products to review, but it seems like Habitat would be a promising solution here, but I haven't done this myself, so I don't have a clear answer at this point. Maybe if you've had experience with graphing historical data in your smart home with, let's say, a HomeBridge setup or a Home Assistant setup, let us know in the comments below. But generally speaking, I am not too into a lot of these custom hubs in your home because when I get done with work, I don't want to have to deal with a lot of the technical stuff of, oh, this thing is broken and has to be rebooted or whatever. That's why I talk about sometimes this channel being for an effective Apple smart home. The idea is that it could be something that just works, quote unquote, and trying to find the products that are reliable and bring you benefits of automation without you having to be super technical, whether you are or not in other parts of your life. When you get home, just being able to sort of turn that part of your brain off and, go around your home and use the automations as if you don't really notice. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.